Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Fringe check, download today. Fringes is a new mobile app designed to meet, mix, and post with Torah keepers like you. That's right, how pleasant is it for brethren to dwell together in unity? Bring it out! Fringes is available on Google Play and the App Store.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Shalom, shalom, Mishpachah Chaverim. That means peace and blessings to family and friends out there. Welcome to another Debate Talk for You show of the second quarter. Your main host for this evening, my name is Sister Shan-T, and with me I do have my co-host, Brother B.A. Before B.A. formally introduces himself, I want to say welcome to those listening now, listening later. We're going to have an awesome show for you tonight, dialoguing with a brother who I had the pleasure to meet. His name is Chanowk Israel, right? Chanowk Israel, and today's title we're going to be talking about recultivating culture, and he knows a lot about that topic there. So tonight we're asking you to call in with your questions, comments, get acquainted with the brother and see how he can help us kingdom build. What we mean by kingdom build is exactly that, make sure we're a sustainable nation and how to govern ourselves as well as self-suffice. To call in, the number is 319-527-6239. Once again, the number is 319-527-6239. Press 1 to talk with the Tannums, right? So, without further ado, my brother B.A., the co-host here. Shalom, brother.
Greetings and much love. All praise is due to the Most High. And much love and respect and honor goes to his holy anointed messenger known as the Christ. Most definitely, this is going to be a good conversation today with Brother Chanowk out in Sacramento, California. I've gotten a chance to know the brother personally. Me and Shan-T, we fellowship with him from time to time. We've gotten a chance to actually sit down and conversate and examine and watch how he conducts himself in the community out in Sacramento. The brother is doing a lot of work, and he's been doing a lot of work of the king. He's been doing the work of the kingdom for quite some time. I've grown to respect the brother and appreciate what he's able to bring to the table. And for us who understand the kingdom, it's very important that there's work to be done. I stress that to a lot of people. And Shan-T had reached out to Brother Chanowk because we recognize him and we know what he's doing. This is not for play. This is not for Facebook views. This is not to look good on the internet. This is actually somebody who lives the kingdom daily. And not only does he do it for himself, his wife and his children, his whole household, he has a beautiful, beautiful setup. And I most definitely am amazed at what I've witnessed myself. And he has reached out and shared some things with me and Shan-T and a few others. And most definitely I thank the Most High for this brother, man, because he's most definitely awesome in the things that he does. I don't see many people doing it, but he's one of the few. And I want to read something real quick, if you guys don't mind. I'm going to pick it up in Matthew chapter 9. And I'm going to pick it up at verse 35. And this is after when Christ, this is when the Pharisees were accusing him. But there's something very important that he says, pick up verse 35. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villagers teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." The world is the harvest, and we are to prepare and to warn the people of the coming kingdom. And we are the laborers. We are supposed to be doing the work, bringing people in, teaching, edifying, relieving them of oppression, bringing solutions to the table. I am a member of the Knesset of Yeshua. Those are the brothers who the Most High had used to bring this out to me, that the kingdom of heaven is not a social media gimmick, it's not a spaceship gimmick, it is a real life situation. It is the gospel, the good news of the kingdom. It's about the social way. It's about reaching people socially in their lives and preparing them and prepping them for the kingdom that is to come, which we understand to be the Most High's kingdom, which we believe to be ruled through his anointed messenger. There's only a messenger by the name of Christ. And brothers like Chanowk and the brothers in the Knesset of Yeshua in Buffalo, they are doing the work. They are reaching out to people. They are providing solutions for those who are snared by poverty and every mental and physical disease known to men. We live in a world where it's full of hate, where it's enticed by evil spirits, where people are manipulated and are enticed to do wicked, to do wrong. And the Most High most definitely is establishing his kingdom, and he wants to separate those who are doing the work so he gets the glory. And brothers like Chanowk and a few others, I believe they are being separated, and I believe their light is shining so the Father gets the glory. And when our brother comes in this evening, I pray that his words and his message will be well received. And with that being said, I'll allow Sis to go ahead and chime in.
Yes. 2 years back, pretty much through the social media, through Facebook. And one thing Chanowk is known for is going live on social media. He actually shows what he's doing, why he's doing it. He's showing you how it's done. And one thing I like about Chanowk after meeting him, after asking him to come do a lecture, inform us of the services him and his wife and family offers, is that he opens up his home to those who want to come learn and get their hands dirty, so to speak. So he lets you come, put your hands in the soil, and as you're there at his vicinity learning and working in the garden and actually physically cultivating, you're actually bringing the scriptures to light. The practicality of the scriptures is actually being implemented as you're working. And so, to elaborate on what B.A. said, Brother Chanowk has been doing the work around Sacramento for a long time. I think he's been in this thing for about 15, 20 years, and he's even assisted Sacramento with helping get laws implemented so that people who grow food, raise food, can make a profit from their own home, from the sales of their own produce, and the text is coming to light when you actually are waiting. A lot of people think that waiting on the kingdom is sitting around, not doing anything, not utilizing any tools, not putting any skills into play. However, when you look at the Hebrew word, it pretty much means to twist. I believe I'm saying the right word if I'm not mistaken. But waiting is an action. So the kingdom of the Most High is being prepared, no doubt. But the thing is, in order to prepare, you must do things right now physically. So Chanowk is good in implementing, raising food, growing food, getting more to grow food. He's actually been on a lot of different panels here in Sacramento with farm to fork. That's a big endeavor here that happens a lot. People are actually providing some of the things that they've grown in their own backyard and being able to take that to the restaurant, being able to distribute that to the restaurant personally, and that way you can know and gain a relationship with the people you're getting the food from. That way you're not getting GMOs, you're not getting food that's been sprayed with pesticides and things that can cause you to get sick or disease or malnutrition. I know there can be a lot of fear with the lettuce and the romaine lettuce, and when the big scare came to the United States, and people like Brother Chanowk was not worried, and it brought his message to light even more. And him and his wife Judith, pretty much they offer a lot of services to the people, and we're going to have them talk about that. Judith working with a lot of people in the community, working with the children, actually making sure the children get equipped with the skills that their parents may not be able to directly give them. They're pretty much making an impact in the community, and it definitely is good to have someone who has. It's good to have someone who has the mayor on speed dial. You know what I mean? In a great positive way, And so the kingdom is here, and preparing for the kingdom means you do what's necessary now. You actually rehearse and put things into practice, put things into play. As B.A. said, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. And we're going to hear a little bit of this background story. I came from the corporate world, how he got involved with understanding the Most High's will, and how he went about transitioning to what he's been doing for the last 17 years. So I want to say I appreciate the brother. I know I'm giving him a lot of praise. I know there's a proverb that says, let another man praise you. So I just want to say, Kol Teherim, Kol Kabod, Hakisaret, Yahweh, Abi, Eloheinu, and that is all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, my Father, our Elohim, our deity, our power, because we have someone like this is powerful in our midst, and we have someone who's willing to share the information. I know a lot of people be like, well, how did you do this and how did you do that? Some people don't even want to come and give you the particulars of how they went about getting involved in being self-employed and being comfortable, so to speak, and you're okay, and have these scriptures come to life. And I know, like, a lot of Israel talks about pre-exile. Well, we were a people of the soil. We had definitely wisdom and skill. We have skill in growing and raising. We have skill in carpentry, blacksmith, cobblers, making shoes, producing clothes. And we want to try to get back to that. And he's a brother who's willing to give the information. He's a brother willing to give out the information, not just what he did, not least how he did it. So I really appreciate the brother's knowledge and understanding and wisdom and the willing desire to do the will and the work of the Most High Yahweh. So we really would love for the audience to participate. Those who are calling in or listening online, press the 1, because if this is the time to retrieve a lot of information from someone who's had a vast amount of experience. So with that being said, Sal, got anything to bring to the table?
All right, family, once again, it's Debate Talk for you, the second quarter, where the male and female dynamic is present in full effect. The number, y'all, 319-527-6239. Make sure y'all call in. By the way, family, just a reminder, we have shows tomorrow and Friday, guys. Just to let y'all know what's on the schedule real quick. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We have the Roundtable episode 44, y'all. The Roundtable episode 44. The topic is, are conspiracy theories just that, conspiracy? Are conspiracy theories just that, conspiracy? We have two special guests that's going to be in a, maybe three. I might have a surprise guest for you guys tomorrow. So far we have two in the roundtables. Tune in about conspiracy theories. And also this Friday, the Chanowk Challenge accepted. Civil disobedience. With special guest Robert Reed, a.k.a. Pastor Nobody. So make sure you check in. Check the shows out this week right here on Debate Talk for you. And other than that, make sure you send me an email, guys. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you send me an email at debatetalkforyou@gmail.com. That's debatetalk, the number 4, letter U @gmail.com. Also at salshowtime77 @gmail.com. Feel free to ask your questions or leave a comment. I'll gladly read out your questions or comments to the special guest or the host. By the way, family, just letting y'all know our special guest is here. So whenever you guys are ready, you can take it away.
All right. All praise to the Most High Yahweh. So, this brother, you heard us talk about for the last few minutes here. This is Brother Chanowk Israel. Brother Chanowk, shalom, shalom. How you doing, my brother?
Shalom, shalom. How's everybody doing today?
Great. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
We have. Oh, you're welcome. We have Brother B.A. on, and we want to.
B.A.'s in the house.
Yeah.
What's going on, brother? How you doing, brother?
Pretty good. I'm doing pretty good.
Always good to hear your voice. What I would do, I would allow. Most definitely. What I would do, I'm gonna sit back. It's written in the Book of Wisdom, in the Wisdom book. So when you're amongst your elders, be slow to speak. So I'm gonna allow sis to go ahead and get on with the interview or the dialogue, and I'll probably chime in from time to time. You know what I'm saying? This is most definitely something I just want to sit back and listen to and show honor and respect for my elders. So you guys go ahead.
Shalom. Thank you.
Shalom. All right. So this is called Recultivating Culture. Once again, Recultivating Culture. The number to talk or call in and press 1-319-527-6239. Once again, 319-527-6239. We're going to get this thing warmed up here, and we're going to give the brother some time to tell us a little about himself, give us a little background, and anything important he wants people to understand about him and his character. So go ahead, brother.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So first of all, I want to just give all praises to the Most High for one, just being in a position to be able to be called on to a conference call for somebody to want to listen to me, or somebody thought that it was important enough to me to have this. So thank you so much, Shan-T and BA. Also want to take the time to say thank you to the audience that's listening for taking time out of your day. Of course, we all have millions of things that we can be doing at any given time. So it's good that you're giving some time to be here with me. I'll just go ahead and just start in a galaxy far, far away, and just talk about a couple of things that kind of got me to this place where I am today. First thing that I will say is that I did not grow up in church. That's the first thing. And I say that affectionately. In fact, as I look back on my life, there's a lot of things that I was never involved in. And I think that those things that I didn't get involved in, I think were to my benefit more so than my detriment. I'm born and raised in Sacramento, California. Sacramento, California is much different than a lot of different places. And the reason why it's different is basically, it's a couple reasons, but one of the main reasons as it relates to our people is that there's really not that many of our people in Sacramento. Last time that I checked on the census, there was anywhere between 150 and maybe 250,000 black people in Sacramento, California. Now, that's a considerable amount, but when you're talking about a population of over 1 million people, you're talking about less than 12% of the population. It's nothing like, in just the West Coast in general, whether you're going to go all the way up to Washington or even all the way down into Los Angeles, you find that there's just, of course, Los Angeles, places like Los Angeles and places like, the Bay Area, what have you, you'll have concentrations, and even in Sacramento, but nowhere to the degree that you may find in, let's say, Louisiana, or you may find in a Cleveland, or let's say a Detroit, or many other places in the Midwest, East Coast, and South. So that makes things a little bit different. Another thing that's important about Sacramento is Sacramento is a very special place. The reason why it's a special place should be telling in the name Sacramento, because if you take the O off, then it reads Sacrament. And so as you start to look into the history of California, of course, there's an indigenous or African woman named Cali, which they believe that's where the name originated from. But even more so, you have Sacramento, which is a sacrament. Now, Sacramento's pretty much known as the city of trees, but at the same time, Sacramento is, in many cases, very close to the Garden of Eden. And why is that? Well, first of all, Sacramento is located in what's called a Mediterranean climate. Mediterranean climate means that the climate here is pretty much the same that you would find in the Middle East. So while maybe the soil and everything is not the same, pretty much the weather is. As a result, we can grow just about anything here that you can grow in the Middle East, such as pomegranates, olives, grapes, to use those things specifically from out of the Bible, as well as many of the herbs that you'll find. Another thing that's important is that it has four different types of water coming into the city. And so at some point, the word Sacramento came from the Jesuits, or the priests that would come through the area, and they named it Sacramento, or having to do something with sacraments because of that. So anyway, so just a little bit of background about Sacramento and why it's so important as it relates to agriculture, as it relates to homes. So it's one of the true Mediterranean climates. So that means that there's not that many true Mediterranean climates outside of this area that we now call Israel. So it's a replica, as far as weather goes, of home. A little bit about myself. Of course, I grew up here. That being said, I have some things that have happened to me when I was about 9 or 10 years old. Riding my bicycle. I lived in the suburbs, one of the few black families in the neighborhood. I was riding my bicycle, and as I'm riding on the sidewalk, all of a sudden I see a rope come up. Bam! Rope grabs me by the neck. There's one kid that's on the other side of a fence, and there's another kid that's on another side of a car. And what they said was, that's how we used to do to them back then. So 10 or 12 years old, this happened to me. So I've experienced, not only have I experienced racism, I felt racism, but I also have the scars, because I still have the scar on my neck from that happening. The only thing that's about that is that my parents never really told me much about slavery or history in general. So I didn't really understand what they were saying until later on in my life, as I started to get into college and start to learn about, our history. That being said, I went through school, got in a lot of trouble, not because I didn't know what was going on, but because of the fact that it was really just boring to me. So I would get in trouble a lot, get sent out of class, et cetera, et cetera. And then and I'm fast forwarding a little bit because this could take a while, but going into 1996 is when I actually found the truth. In finding the truth, I'm one of those people that goes in all the way. So I also changed my name legally in that time. And so at that time, I was just like many Israelites that get into the knowledge. I'm running around thinking I'm powerless all the time. And then finally I get told that I'm one of the chosen people of God, Yahweh, and the Bible's our history. And so, of course, like many people, you get excited, and the first thing that you want to do is you want to go run out and tell everybody. You want to start telling your parents, your family, people you know. And if you've encountered the same thing that I've encountered, you find that they just don't seem too interested. They didn't seem as interested and happy as I was. So many times those conversations turned into what you could say arguments, because of course in the passion and zeal and wanting to represent for the Most High, of course those things can turn into type arguments and whatever. And I was tough back then. I was one of those ones that just used to just go on and go on, because I'm taking heads for the Most High and all those things. What I know now is all I did was make myself look like a fool, and just really just turned off a lot of people that probably would have been coming had I had a better spirit. But of course we all live and learn. So I go through that maybe until around. And at that time, I also made the decision that I wanted to learn how to start growing food, too, as well. And the reason why is because for me, and because of the fact that I didn't grow up in church, I didn't have the idea that was in my head that I was supposed to be waiting for somebody else to come and save me, or that somebody was going to come and rescue me at any given time. I just never got that type of teaching. Like I said, I never grew up in church, so I never got Christianity taught to me. And so as I started to study, and then, of course, I saw another scripture before that, when that scripture was called, "Be fruitful, multiply, and subdue the earth." So in following orders, that's exactly what I started to do. I started having children. And, of course, now that I know that there's a such thing as a literal definition and there's also a such thing as an allegorical definition, I probably should have allegorized that one in the beginning, because, of course, once you start having children, you got to take care of those children. They need food, they need clothing, they need shelter, they need all those things. And so I was putting the cart before the horse. And so here I am about, 1998, 1999. Still trying to grow some food. First thing you realize, if you want to try to grow some food, then you're going to have to have some land, which I didn't have at the time. So there's just a lot of things that brought me into the person that I am today. Even before I actually changed my name and came into the truth, I studied in African traditional religions, such as Yoruba, the Igbo people, Africa. I had an African name that was Kikuyu, named Kamau, that people used to call me way back in the day. But something that was really strange to me was that no matter what religion that I've studied and read about, it never applied to me. If, I became a Buddhist and I started studying the writings of Buddha, then, of course, whatever country that Buddha came from, then that culture will be represented in the writings that you read. The same if you become a Christian. Of course, if you read about Christianity, it's going to take you back to Europe, and it'll be something that, especially if you start talking about the Nicene Council of 325, when it actually came into being. And I found that everywhere. So if I wanted to follow Confucius, Confucius, he's from China, so anything that he wrote about was written in Chinese, and not only was it written in Chinese, but it had the Chinese culture involved in it. And so all of these things, studying all these different religious belief systems, I never found anything for us. If I wanted to become a Muslim, of course, it was written in Arabic, and it talks about the Arab culture within Islam. But there was nothing specifically for us. There was nothing that talked about the things that happened to us. There was no religious belief or system or book at that point, because I wasn't reading too much of the Old Testament, that could tell me why my people went into slavery. Out of all the people in the world, why did my people go into slavery? And why did my people get treated like they got treated in slavery, and all the different things that happened? And here we are out of slavery 50, 60 years, and we're still getting treated a certain way. There was nothing to me that could explain that. And that didn't happen until I started to read about our history and our culture, especially coming from the Old Testament of the Bible. And that's when I was like, you know what, this is our history, because it answers these basic questions. So anyways, there it is. It's about 2000. I decided I'm going to start not growing my own food, but at that point I'm thinking about how am I going to grow my own food, because it's impossible for me to do so without having land. And so at that point, I decided that I was going to have to get some land in order for me to come into any of these things that I keep reading about. And so in doing so, I took a job in the corporate world. I'm an IT person by trade, so I did that. And then at the same time, into a position to purchase some land. And so here I was with some land, and so I still want to start growing some food. So we fast forward now until about 2007. And, of course, 2007 is when the crash came. It's funny, I talk to college students all the time, and I started talking about 2007, and some of them were only like 10, 11 years old. But for those that do know, we know that the economy crashed, and if it wasn't for the stimulus, we'd probably be in the Stone Ages now. In 2007, that's when I decided to start growing food in my backyard. I had a 1/4 acre worth of land, so I took about 35 square feet, started growing some food in the backyard. Of course, through this time, I'm studying the scriptures. I'm reading the scriptures that tell me about, the first command was that we were put in a garden, to dress it and keep it. And I started to see a pattern that, especially back in that time when I started to talk about growing food, then there was all these ways that I got discouraged. I was told that the land was cursed or the earth was cursed, and because we're not at home, I don't need to start growing any food. It's stupid. You can't do that until you get ready to go home. You need to wait for the Messiah to come back before you start growing food. Much of the messaging that was given to me was telling me that I shouldn't be trying to become self-sufficient and start to grow my own food. And so, of course, got into a bunch of arguments. Back then, the arguments were it wasn't Facebook, it wasn't MySpace, but it was Yahoo groups. That's where most of the arguing was taking place back then, and I'm probably dating myself by talking about it. But that's where the arguments take place. So at some point, I kind of just got out of there, but then I kept growing the food that I needed to grow. And so at the same time, while I'm growing the food, I started to take a deeper look into the culture of the people in the Bible. Because, of course, as in most of the places that I've been, and I've been to camps, I've been to Knesset, I've been to, congregations, and et cetera, all over the country in the last, 15, 16, 17 years. And what I found is that many times we go and we meet on the Sabbath, and then in many cases we don't see each other again until maybe the next Sabbath. And my question was always, so what were these people doing? I mean, of course, it's funny to think about, but Abraham and Sarah probably weren't ever sitting down and studying scriptures because there weren't any to study. And if you think about most of what I see in the Old Testament about how Abraham worshipped, was that he usually got him a bunch of rocks, built an altar, called on the Most High, and then went along about his business. And so I became very concerned about those, and I started to realize that there were books out there that you could find that actually talked about the biblical life, the daily life in biblical times. So it started to talk about different things. And so that's where I started figuring that I wanted to be not necessarily an example, but I actually wanted to live the lifestyle of our ancestors. And so that's when I started to really think about, okay, agriculture not just as something that you do, but agriculture as a way of life, because it involves what is called culture. And that's something that's very, very important. So with that, Shan-T, I'm going to go ahead and stop there and just hopefully that satisfied a brief introduction of a little bit about me and a little bit of how I came to where I am right now.
Appreciate that, Hello. And you can get it in pretty much. That was great. I appreciated you giving that in depth of a background. When you come on social media, you probably do about 15, 20-minute snippets of your videos. People just want to get more acquainted with who you are and how you came to
Sure.
your motivations and things like that. What drives you. So, and as you were talking about agriculture, I was reminded of the presentation you gave in the Sabbath class about culture, and pretty much culture is like defined as like the arts, the language, the food, the dress, the festivals, rituals, and practices that pretty much identify a people or a nation. Am I correct?
Right.
Right. So when you have this culture, people need to see things displayed and exhibited by us, and those are the things. So when you say to cultivate, you're pretty much getting the land prepared to. You're pretty much serving the land, right? So it can serve you. So you're getting things ready, like you're growing crops, you're having a garden, you're making sure the commandment is done to be fruitful and multiply, correct? So when you do that, you're preparing you're preparing that land, and so I like to equate land to people. So we're preparing the people, and as you're preparing, you're actually implementing the practices right now, and you're getting these crops together, you're getting the gardening together, you're getting the tools to feed yourself and be self-sufficient. So when we say we're recultivating culture, we're doing it again because we know over here in America and abroad to the four corners of the earth, our peoples were stripped. We were brought on slave ships to America, stripped of our culture, right? Stripped of our deity, our diet, our language, right? So we're getting this done again. We're recultivating this culture. We're trying to re-implement and get reacclimated to what was given to us to be a nation. So how would you define culture, or how would you elaborate on, recultivating culture as we just mapped out?
Well, one of the questions that I always get all the time, Shan-T, especially in the way that the world is going right now, is, are the Hebrew Israelites a cult? Right? That's the question that I always get. And as soon as people ask the question, before they even get a chance to figure it out, I'm always like, yes, we are a cult. And, of course, that only leads to blow their mind because, of course, when you say the word cult, depending on what you've been exposed to in life, then you could get real scared, or you could get really, you might get really concerned because, of course, when you say the word cult, you hear words like Jim Jones, you hear words like, David Koresh, you hear things, all these different negative stories that you've heard about cults, which, of course, in fact, nowadays, when you don't like somebody, all you have to do is just say that they're a cult, and then that'll help to discredit people. However, of course, I like to study. I like to have my study tools. So right now, in front of me, of course, I've got the scriptures in front of me. I've got my Webster's 1828 Bible in front of me, as well as maybe like Microsoft and Carter, some of those things in front of me. So in looking up the word cult, it just tells you, well, first of all, the word cult is from early 17th century, from the Latin word cultus, which means to worship. And it's also from a Latin word colere, which means to cultivate. And so it's defined as a system of religious beliefs, especially an informal and transient belief system regarded as others as misguided, unorthodox, extremist, false, and directed by a charismatic authoritarian leader. It also says a body of organized practices and beliefs supposed to involve interaction with and control over supernatural powers. And it also says an extreme or excessive aberration for a person, philosophy of life, or activity. So in reality, when you start to look at the word cult, it's not a bad word in the first place. Of course, like I said, depending on the messaging, people will try to make you think that it's a bad thing. So really you're talking about practicing some types of religious beliefs, which of course that's what we do. The next thing that you deal with when you're talking about culture or cult, it means to cultivate. Because when you're talking about cultivation, you're talking about bringing some kind of land into a position to where you're able to put seeds in it and it's able to grow. So first of all, don't be worried about the word cult because it's not that bad. And really, if you look at some of the synonyms for cult, it just means offbeat, alternative, out of the ordinary, or unusual. So anything that's not mainstream in our country, mainstream is what? Christianity, maybe right-wing Christianity or conservative as they call it. And anything outside of that is going to be labeled as some kind of cult. But getting back into culture, the idea of culture is a complex whole of knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, law, customs, and any other capabilities and habits that are acquired by people. And so those are the things that culture makes up. Because, for example, people have to make everyday decisions, and that's part of your culture. That's the knowledge. All cultures have some type of belief, which is a worldview of the unseen. So, there's some cultures that believe in ancestor worship, some that don't. So you have different types of worldviews, talking about forces of the supernatural, myths, all those different types of things too as well. Also, inside of a culture, every culture has its own morality. What is right and what is wrong? Are some things better than others? Well, that's really not for anybody to make the decision about, because just because one culture is better than somebody follows one culture and somebody follows another culture, then that doesn't mean one's right or one's wrong. It just means that it's different. And that's all you're dealing with. And then, of course, every culture has its own means of social control to regulate things. For example, in our culture, it's the job of men and women as they grow up to get married and have children. In order to reproduce ourselves. That's part of our culture. And then also we have customs. So every culture has its own way of doing things. And all of these things are part of the groups that we belong to. So you have, we all belong to a network and structure of social relations, right? So if you go to work, you go to work, you're part of a team, that's your cult that you're a part of. For that particular time, maybe it's 8 hours during the day or whatever your work schedule is. So we're always a member of some types of group. And with culture is something that's learned. That means that the only way that you can figure out about it is by being around people who are part of it. It's also based on symbols. So if I tell you I have a staff in my hand, you might immediately start to think about Moses. You might think about something else in our culture, but staffs are very important in our culture. If I tell you about a ram's horn or a shofar, then of course that has some kind of symbolic meaning within our culture. In addition to that, culture is also shared, and it's also integrated in patterns so that all of the pieces of a culture all work together. Because from what I read in Psalms 133:1, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And so these are just all little pieces of culture that's important, because as we start to move forward and we see, camps come in and we see camps go out and we see congregations set up and then we see congregations leave, the reason why is because we sometimes get into what's called religion only. And so what that means is we only deal with religion, but we don't also understand that the Bible talks about economics, meaning how we're going to make a living or what things that we're going to do in order to be able to either get money or things that we're going to be able to do to become self-sufficient. For example, when people come here from other countries, especially if they're coming here from somewhere, let's say, for example, if you're coming here from China, when you step foot in the United States, the chances are you already have some kind of cultural way to be able to make money. And, of course, you see them in every single place in the United States, and they're called restaurants, where they take pieces of their culture, i.e. the way that they cook and they eat in China, and they turn that into what? An experience. So then people come to the United States or wherever they are in the United States, they set up shop, and their culture, i.e. their food in this particular case, becomes a way for them that they offer that to the world to either eat or to have that kind of dining experience. And as a result, that's a way that they use that particular part of their culture to fund their communities. I've never seen anybody but a Chinese person working in a Chinese restaurant, and maybe there is some other people, but it seems like they only hire from within their own communities. And so as they keep these places open on and on, then of course they're able to finance themselves. So it's one of those things of, just looking at culture from something that allows people to work together in a unified aspect so that everybody can be better and greater. And I think that for our culture was definitely defined by and revolves around agriculture or cultivation of the land. So, that's what my understanding of culture is, because, if you think about, like, for example, if you think about something like a pyramid, or even if you think about the movable temple that's in the wilderness, or if you think about some of the pyramids that were even built down in South America or in the Americas in general, you'll find that in order for any of these types of things to take place, it requires people thinking along the same lines. It can't be that, everybody is going out from every direction from each other. You have to be thinking on the same place. So in culture is like an iceberg, which means that it has some parts which you can see, such as your behaviors, your traditions, your customs, and things like eating habits. But then there's other parts of culture that you can't see, such as priorities, core values, concept of self, attitudes, patterns of handling emotions, and even things like child raising beliefs. All of these things are a function of culture. And so the reason why I'm spending so much time elaborating on this point is because if we don't do anything other than read the scriptures on the Shabbat or what have you, and then we go to work in our 9-to-5 jobs and then come home, then we're what's called religion only, because the culture of our ancestors would have us to start developing the types of institutions that would then start to make us self-sufficient. And so that goes into a certain type of delineation or sections between family structure. So, for example, if you have in the times of Abraham, you have what? You have the patriarchal rule, where you have a man and then you have his family, and then you may have some extended family in the time of Abraham. Of course, he has children. They start to grow. They end up in the time of Jacob, and of course, Jacob having 12 sons, and they grow bigger and bigger and bigger to the point. At some point, there's a monarch or a king that comes into place, where there's an actual kingdom put into place. And so each time that you see these things happen, you see the culture not necessarily change, but rules have to be made in order to deal with, more people in more places. And you'll see this anywhere that you go, whether you're talking about working somewhere or not. And so we're in a situation to where we could show, if you took us to class right now and gave us a test, we'll score an A in everybody else's culture except for our own. So, for example, if I started talking about kimonos, and I started talking about, seaweed, rice, and vegetables, and fish wrapped in seaweed, right? Then all of a sudden you're going to say, oh, Japanese culture, right? Right. You got the kimono, right? And then I started to describe some sushi. And at the same time, if I start talking about, a guy in a little suit with a little red little blanket, looks like, and he's got a bull running after him, right? And I start talking about Zorro, right? Then of course that should tell you, something about culture, and that's Spanish culture, right? But then if I start talking about things such as diadems, and I start talking about lentils, or if I start talking about grapes, pomegranates, olives, and start talking about some good wine, we may not understand and know that those are things that are part of our culture. If I start talking about, blowing shofars, and I start talking about certain types of tents and eating food where all the food is on one plate and everybody's eating with a piece of bread, or sopping it as they call it, or even just lentils in general, then we may not know that those are things that are part of our culture. So culture controls the way what you eat, the things that you wear, how you go about maneuvering through a society. All those things have to do with culture. And while, of course, we have the scriptures, in many cases we have to consult other books in order to find the specific culture of what it is our ancestors followed in order to be able to come into the idea of what they do. And so that's kind of what we do here at the farm, because most people don't understand. They do understand later, but the whole idea of what Yisrael Passion is a sharing of agriculture from our perspective to people that are interested in learning a little bit more about it. And that's kind of what we do in building gardens in people's yards, because agriculture is something that's very dear to the Most High. It's also dear to us. So people want to get gardens built in their yard, so that's a business. You can do edible landscaping. People need to learn how to cook certain types of ways and cook with certain types of food, especially when you start talking about okra and different types of things that we brought here. Because we brought a lot of the things that we eat, we brought those things here on slave ships. So, it's just returning back to those things that place us closer back into nature and closer into the ground. And those are the things that I think that as we start to do those things, then we'll start to do what we're supposed to do, especially as it relates to the ordering of our families.
Right. I appreciate that, and all praise to the Most High for that. I do want to say thank you for clearing that up and setting the record straight about the definition of cult, and making sure we understand its definition is, it's just something that has a nation or people stand out as unique and distinguished, so you can tell the difference between us and another people. And I like how you brought out that a lot of the way the religious system, especially over here in America, wants to do is just pretty much tell you, like, okay, just be indoctrinated or just go along with some dogma. And as long as you go with how we see things, or the dogma, we try to get you to for that matter, that there's more to the Most High's kingdom. It's more to the Most High's kingdom than just whether you believe about a certain teaching or instruction. You know what I mean? But for the most part, right, it's pretty much about getting back to the culture. So with that being said, this is pretty much a conversation, and we have callers calling in, and pretty much they want to talk to you and get to know you, and they have some questions. So we do have a caller on the line. Brother Sal, you go ahead and let the person in.
All right, we're going to the phone lines, and the number is 319-527-6239 for those that's on the internet or Blog Talk Radio. If you want to chime in, simply dial that number, one, and we'll join the conversation. 443-815, you are live.
Hello, Salshowtime. How you doing?
Doing pretty good, man.
This is Brother Mercy.
Hey, shalom, Brother Mercy. How you doing? Thanks for calling in.
I'm doing great. I think culture is very important, and I like how he connected it with agriculture, because that's definitely there's definitely some serious connections there as far as, the land and so forth. That's definitely the beginning point, is the land and agriculture and growing. However, what I wanted to say, though, is a lot of times our ancestors, they were like, when we talk about Abraham, they were like nomads. They didn't reside in the cities most of the time. When you talk about, they had sheep, they had cattle and different things of that nature. They were mainly rural residents. And then when he talked about the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, and so forth, they know the difference between each other. They don't call it. They don't just classify themselves as Asians, but they classify themselves as nations. Because all those are nations. Korea is a nation. China's a nation. We're the only people that's not really from a nation. And then the nation that we're claiming, Hebrew Israelites, a lot of us are not citizens of that nation. So others are able to reach back into China. You know what I'm saying? Into the Koreans are able to go back to Korea. But how many Hebrew Israelites? I know there are Hebrew Israelite communities in Israel. I understand that. But as far as the vast majority, I don't think most of them have citizenship in Israel. So I think there's a disconnect there. And so there's a disconnect with the tradition there. But I just wanted to say that I think we have to establish our own culture just like Abraham did. He established his own culture. He had his wife, he had his cattle, sheep, those type of things. But I just wanted to say sometimes we're gonna have to establish our own culture because a lot of us can't reach back. Just like Abraham. If you look at Abraham, he was a nomad. He didn't reach back to his fathers, most of the time. He didn't, but he did have some traditions that was passed down. I just wanted to say, though, this is a very interesting and powerful conversation. I just wanted to say, though, that as far as the land and gardening, I think that's definitely an excellent starting point. And I think we're going to have to establish our own culture within this nation in order to be successful because we can't, most of us can't go back like the other people that you mentioned and to the grassroots. But I just want you to know, what do you think about that, establishing, I think you're doing that, you talk about the land and talk about growing your own stuff. So I think you already doing that, but I think more of us need to do that. So I think that's a part of establishing our own culture within the nation, and I think that's what we really have to do, establish our own culture. And I just want to know what you think about that. Well, that's really my question about establishing our own culture within this nation we're living in.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. One thing that we have to really think about and deal with is that history is not static. It's not something. See, when you're dealing with history, and that's what we're dealing with because we're reading about the scriptures, and these things happened a while ago. So when you're dealing with history, you can't just look at history and say, okay, my ancestors did this back in the past, so then I'm just going to do that again and everything's just going to be fine, because we all know that things change. So what we have to do is we have to look at the reasons why they did the things that they did.
Amen.
Look at the I guess you could say the reasons why, and then we have to figure out how we can take those same reasons why, and then we may have to adapt things for now. And I'll give you an example because you see this all throughout the scriptures. And so, for example, when you look at Abraham and what kind of government that he had for him and his family, well, it was just him, his wife, family. There was no children at the time. And then there was probably some extended family members. Well, in order to keep that type of system going, it would be just as simple as I call everybody together and we can sit in a tent. There's probably 10, 12 of us, and we can sit around a fire. And I can say, okay, when we get up in the morning, I want you to do this. 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 And everything's cool because it's not that many people. But as you start to grow, and let's say you get to a point to where you have 300, 400, 500 people, or you have, in the case of, Exodus, you have thousands and thousands of people. Well, you can't have the same type. You're not going to be able to call everybody in the room all the time, even though there was a time during the existence where you had to call everybody to read the law. But at the same time, you then would have what's called maybe lieutenants or rulers of tens, rulers of hundreds, rulers of thousands, to where you would issue orders and there would be a chain of command that went out to people. So I think you're right that we do have to start to establish our culture. But here's what we do need to keep in mind and understand that in addition to agriculture, that we also practice other types of professions, such as pottery making, such as weaving, such as making things like leather, carpentry, masonry, and even metallurgy. These are all types of skills that we practice. So when you start to look at those are what are called trades, right? And of course, when you start having a trade, then you build what's called a guild, where all the master tradesmen would then, when they want to, promulgate that particular trade, they would hire or they would attract what are called apprentices, where apprentices come and they learn from them, and then they move up the ranks until at some point they become a master, and then when they become a master, they're able to go and set up their own shop, and then they're able to train apprentices to themselves. So you're right. We do need to establish our own culture, and at the same time, we need to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of it just being religion only, and make sure that not only are we able to train our young people in the things that they need to do religiously and spiritually, but also how to make a living, how to take some kind of something from on the planet, wood, clay, straw, the soil, whatever, and we can take something and then we can turn it into something else, and that will ensure that we have the things that we need. You see this in Tuskegee. Booker T. Washington did that. He started a university called Tuskegee, and of course, if you don't know about Booker T. Washington, he was a Bible reader. So it wasn't like he was just making that stuff up. He got it from out of the scriptures. So that's my answer to your question. Of course, we can get into scriptural references and things of that nature too, but really in just having a serious conversation, that you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I just think it's wonderful to have this conversation, this dialogue, because these are the type of things we need to talk more of, because I think, like you said, it has become a religion, and then we argue over doctrines and how you read the scriptures instead of understanding these people had a way of life, man. These people did this for survival reasons. It's not it's not okay. I know what Genesis chapter 10 verse 3 means. It wasn't about that. You know what I'm saying?
There was no Genesis 10 verse 3 for them to talk about.
I know, right?
There was no. It wasn't even a question to have a conversation about. The thing was, if there was, and specifically if you look at the way that the chain of command was, if there was something going on where there was a difference of order or whatever, then you would have to go to Abraham for that.
Right.
That's who would tell what the order is going to be. So-and-so said that we can't eat goats. Well, before we can make any type of decision, we need to follow the chain of command. Who's the head here? Depending on what it was, you might be going back to Abraham, or you might even be going back to the lady of the house, depending on what you're talking about. And that's where people will get their orders of things that they're supposed to do for that day, so that that tribe of people can survive.
And a lot of the foods that were legal, they raised it. Like, for example, they ate sheep because why? They raised sheep. They were sheep herders or shepherds. They were cattle herders, very few Hebrews you knew were pig herders. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
so that's what I'm trying to say. See, people don't understand that. So it's like they ate their occupation from their occupation. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like.
And then also, excuse me.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and also another thing is that they didn't eat meat all the time.
Right, of course.
They weren't eating meat. They weren't eating meat 3 times a day, because back in those days, the amount of cattle that you have is also a sign of wealth. So you're not going to eat up all your money. You might need to trade that for some weapons or something like that, or whatever else that you may need that your family is not able to, produce on its own. So, it was one of those things that they had a culture that controlled all those things, and that's why it's important to actually do those things. Because as you start to grow your own food, if you start to learn something like carpentry, if you start to learn how to make pots out of clay, which these are all things that people still do to this day, and these are very lucrative trades, right? While we're trying to find out what our young men are supposed to be doing, if we just say, okay, we want some carpenters, we want some people that are in the pottery, and we want some farmers to come out of there, then believe me, those are very lucrative trades as you start to produce those products and be able to sell them to not only Israel, but to the general public.
Yeah. Well, all right, man. It was a great discussion, man. Thanks for answering my question.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Thank you so much. Once again, you're listening to Debate Talks for You. This is the segment called The Second Quarter, and we have special guests on Chanowk Israel of the Israel Family Farm. Please feel free to call in. Press 1 to talk. The number is 319-527-6239. Once again, the number is 319-527-6239. No, I was listening to you talk with Brother Mercy there, and brought up a lot of good points about, you know, what pretty much what it is to get back to a culture of our own, and pretty much establish that or have a foundation of that, and pretty much talking about what things from the past we can implement and have today as things, like you said, evolve and progress. And one of the things that is not yet talked about is not only is there, you know, a need to grow food, raise food, and know how to do know how to have the skills and trade and things of that nature. And the thing is, to fully establish a nation, right? Talking about having, you got to have a military. Pretty much, you have a manufacturing process. You know, like you said, you know, the pottery. Pretty much, there's a process for that. You know, getting schools, getting hospitals, getting a way where we can have natural or herbal medicinals given to our people instead of synthetic drugs in the court system. And we talk about, you know, having a nation and having our own nation and our own government. Like, you know, government starts with the family, and then knowing how to actually put the family together, keep the family together, and make sure it's a maintainable, healthy relationship. What do you think about those things I just said, which, you know, Brother Mercy alluded to a good point. Sometimes it's like not just about how many scriptures you know, how many scriptures you can memorize, how you can finesse and connect one text to the other. But when we talk about all these things in the scriptures, the main thing is about this kingdom. In order to have a kingdom, you have a people, you have a nation who are actually implementing those things to sustain themselves, is what I just listed. You know, schools, hospitals, and maybe a homeschooling network. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that those things are all valid. First of all, you just have to look at our communities nationwide, anywhere within the vicinity of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and you'll find that the conditions that we're in is that we have everybody taking care of us. And whether that's in the case of whether it's in the case of, you're talking about, for example, in my neighborhood, when you start to look at the statistics, black people are on the bottom of everything when it comes to, you know, how many businesses that we own, when it comes to college graduates, when we come to all those different types of things, we're always on the bottom of those lists. And as a result, there's these things called nonprofit organizations who get grants of millions and millions and millions of dollars a year to do what? Provide solutions or provide some help for those problems. So there's already millions and millions and millions of dollars coming into our communities or into organizations who are supposed to be working in our communities to do things for us, whether that is parenting classes, whether it's you know how to take care of yourself when you're pregnant, and on and on and on and on and on. So we're a people that are seen by everybody else in the world as unable to take care of ourselves when it comes to the day-to-day things. And so as you start thinking about culture is the first place that all of the things that you're supposed to have in society are set up. So, for example, let's fast rewind back to the time of Abraham. Let's say a young man or a young woman felt like they were depressed, and they didn't know what to do with themselves, and they felt sad. Well, they're not going to call up a shrink or a psychologist and say, hey, let's go and take our children to a psychiatrist. They're not going to do that. They would say, why don't you go and sit down and talk to the elders, in male or female, and find out from them, because they may be able to help you with those types of things. So when you start talking about culture, you start talking about putting together the systems in the institutions to where you don't have to rely on other people to do things for you. Because if you're getting counsel from somebody who does not know the Most High, well then I believe that there's some warnings last time I read against that. So, you know, it's time for us to start putting those things back in place so we can, you know, start to have our own everything. And that's what the whole purpose of culture does. And, you know, like and one thing that I didn't mention in my journey is that I did work for corporate America. I worked from 2000 to 2011. In 2011, after growing food in my backyard and learning how to grow food in my backyard from the time of 2007 to 2011, which is about 4 years, I decided to go ahead and quit the corporate job and go ahead and do agriculture or agriculture-related things full time. So that's my quote-unquote job, is doing that. And also that's Judith, she does that too as well. So this is what we do. In fact, the reason why I was late today is because we got a last-minute call from some people who wanted to have a farm-to-fork type of meal. So they called us up. I picked a whole bunch of greens and other things from the farm. Judith applied her magical skills to it. They've got a meal. They've got some chili. They've got some greens. And they also have cornbread, jalapeno cornbread. And, of course, at the end of the day, we get to make money. They get a healthy meal. And we don't have to sell people something that's not good for them. So, like I said, in the same way. Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So, just in the same way of what I'm saying, that as we start to come back into our culture, then we'll find that the things of our culture that we used to survive back then are the very same things that we could use today, not only to just survive, but to become tradespeople that have valuable services that this society that we live in needs. And those people will trade their money for your knowledge, especially when they know that you're Yisrael. And that's just something, you know, that I can just testify to that because, you know, I've been all over the world. And like I said, because my name is Yisrael it's on my driver's license, then the type of reception that you get from people, especially outside of the United States, when you're a so-called black person and you have the name Yisrael, there's no way that you can actually explain that. You just have to experience it for yourself.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you said about we have a lot of the skills, talent, knowledge, and understanding right now, and pretty much we're going to the outside resources of people to acquire these things. But the thing is, if we're able to go to these people for outside services, and we know how to, sometimes we know how to do them ourselves, but we rather pay somebody else, and that means like that's why we're like the number one consumer. And pretty
Absolutely.
much you confirm that we are able, when we reform our mind and renew our mind, we can redirect our monetary income and resources back into our neighborhood and into people who can provide us those services, you know. And I believe like we could sacrifice just a couple of more dollars, you know, just to make sure the money gets what do I want to say? The money gets circulated around our neighborhood, our people, 10 to 15 times at least before it moves outside of our community, right? So with that being said, I heard you say a few things about yourself and your wife Judith providing a lot of services, and I would like to say Chanowk helped me build a garden, start a garden in my backyard. It's a small little spot, and I'm always picking his mind. I'm always picking his brain. I'm always asking him questions, and a lot of the questions I ask him is not just like, "What are you doing?" but how did you get yourself in a place where you transition from solely dependent on the corporate world income to pretty much making money from the soil, pretty much having the earth, be fruitful for you, and other things that you and your wife do, such as apothecary, soap making. How did you even know what food to grow? And one of the main things I would like for people to understand is that they can ask you questions like that, because I'm like, okay, how do our people go about acquiring some land? Say, for example, if they don't want to go to be a 501c3 or a nonprofit organization and get grants, they probably don't want any money like that. How would they acquire land, or how would they be able to transition from a corporate job into a self-employed job, things of that nature? But before you get into, how you guys got into soap making and apothecary and teaching how to cook. Go ahead.
Sure. So the way that this happens, the way that this ends up happening is that, it's really about Exodus. It's really about leaving Egypt. And it's, when I say this, sometimes people look a little bit strange, but Egypt is a mindset, right? It's a state of mind. And when you look at Egypt and look at the story of Exodus, I mean, they could have they probably couldn't have picked up and left, but they could have left and done some things whenever they wanted to. However, when you've been oppressed, and they call that the Stockholm Syndrome, sometimes your mind is in a place of what they call slave mentality. And so the first thing that you have to understand is that in the place that we call the United States, it doesn't run unless people are buying things. And what happens to us is that once we go from our, and I grew up poor, so my parents grew up poor, so I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, although we always had the things that we need. But the first time that you get some money, then the first thing that you want to do is you start consuming. You start spending up, making bills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by the time what happens is most people, they end up in what they call the middle class. And at that time, they usually have a very debt-ridden life. So, you may have a house, you may have some cars, you may have a few little doodads and things toys that you play with, but those things are usually financed, which means that you're in debt. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to come out of the Egyptian mindset, which means that you're going to have to start getting rid of stuff. Because when you make the transition from working at a corporate job, which is probably going to make a lot of money, but then you're going to start consuming more, to going to, I guess you could say maybe like a wilderness economy after they came out of Egypt. You're going to have to think about how much money can I save by learning the skills to be able to provide things for myself. So, of course, with me, I had a large family. I have 8-9 children. And so when they were young, of course, so you're talking about, each child eating plus all the adults eating, and then they may want to eat 2 or 3 times. So you're cooking for like 20 to 30 to 40 people each meal. So then you have to think about, okay, what's the most efficient way of being able to feed the household? And so that's part of the reason why I started growing food, is because I wanted to reduce the food bill, because the food bill was so high. So really, to answer your question succinctly, is you're going to have to start reducing your monthly bills. You might not be able to have Xfinity with all the extra channels on it, because you're paying $250, $300 a month. Right. You may have to start figuring out how to. I mean, because you can always get something else that's a little bit cheaper to do that. So it's about taking stock of all the money that you may be wasting, first of all, and then wrapping a tight belt, they call it austerity measures, and figuring out how you can save your money. And then the second thing is to start looking at what is it that not even really what you want to do, but what is it. And for me, the decision for me was looking at our culture and looking at the types of things that people in the Bible did to support themselves. I mean, we all know that the man that they called Jesus was a carpenter, right? So that means he knew how to build stuff. So he wouldn't have to find himself in a position to where he was broke. He could drop down in any city as long as there's wood around there, then guess what? He can make something out of that. I know that there's always going to be some land wherever I go. So I was like, I need to learn how to work with the soil. So while I was working, I was learning and teaching myself how to grow food until I could get to a point to where I could grow enough food to where we could make sure that we didn't have to be in the grocery store so much. And then, of course, with the surplus, we're able to sell it, or just like I said, we're in the case, doing some kind of, farm to fork type meals and et cetera. But then you start going through that and you think about, okay, well, what else can we start to eliminate? And that's where soap came, because of course if you're buying soap out of the store, it's expensive. And even if it's not expensive, if you're buying that Dove and all that type of stuff, what you'll find when you read the labels of that stuff is that it's detergent. It's detergent. It's not really soap at all. So it's not good for your skin. So we wanted to have products. If you're going to be using those products all the time, every time you get into the bathroom, then it's time to start eliminating your dependence on those products. So it's like, it was basically, let's learn how to make soap. So we made the investments in the equipment and try to start learning the things and what have you so that we could start making soap. When we started to eat less meat, because of course, if you don't know where the meat's coming from, then you could be in danger. So we had to start cooking differently, start learning how to use different types of seasonings, start learning how to make different types of meals. Couscous became something that was on the plate a lot of lentils. Of course, we grow a lot of greens here, so we have a lot of greens too. So as you can see, what I'm talking about is you're really changing your culture from, and of course, when the children of Israel were in the wilderness with Moses, what were they doing? They were complaining about the flesh pots, right? Where are our flesh pots? We would miss the flesh pots of Egypt. So you're going to have to start cutting back on the types of things that you're eating and start to enrichen the food that you're eating. These are the things that you're going to have to do to be able to do that, because when you do make that transition, then you're not going to have access to the same amount of resources that you did before. And so the less that you can survive on, then that's what's going to keep you going as you start to build up that clientele. So whatever, things that you've decided that you wanted to start offering for services start to pay. That's oversimplifying, of course, but that's kind of the first idea. You're actually making an exodus out of Egypt in the Egyptian mindset of buy, consume. And then you now start to think about, okay, I'm still buying, I'm still consuming, but how many of those things do I really, really need? And then how many of those things that I'm buying, can I go through the process of learning how to produce for myself, so that then I no longer have to buy them. And then if I'm making a surplus, then I can provide that surplus to other people that are interested.
I appreciate that. Once again, you're listening to Debate Talk for You, the second quarter. We have our special guest on, Chanowk Israel from the Israel Family Forum. Real quick, Chanowk, you want to plug your social media information where people can, maybe look at some of the services and products you provide, a website or anything? Go ahead, social media, YouTube, anything.
Sure. You can find us on Facebook, Yisrael, Yisrael, Yisrael Family Farm. You can just do a Google search of that, or you can catch us on Facebook, catch us on Instagram. We're also on Twitter. Any one of those places, and you'll be able to find out more information about myself, of the farm. You can find out about what kind of classes that we have. If you also go to Eventbrite, www.yisraelfamilyfarm.eventbrite.com, for those people that may be local, you can also find out about our upcoming classes and things that we do. We're more than happy to reach out to those people and share information with those people, but believe me, it's going to be work. When you make the move from being an employee to self-employed, it's going to be a little bit different, because as an employee, you don't really have to think much. And when I say that, I don't mean that you're stupid, but I'm just saying that you don't have to think about where your check's coming from. You don't have to think about how you're going to get the tools that you need in order to do the job that you need to do. Usually when you're working a 9-to-5 job, those things are already provided for you, and you sit down, you do your job, and then in most cases you're done with your job and you go home. Going into self-employed, it's a lot different, because then now you're taking care of all those things yourself. But the benefits of being able to do that, because when you start talking about being free, the first freedom that you have to achieve is getting out of the 9-to-5 job, because once you can get out of there, then you can actually start to see life in a way to where you can start to plan your life as opposed to it planning you all the time. You can start to invest in things. You can start to see different opportunities that you would have never seen, because, of course, you have 8 hours of your day always taken away from working from somewhere else.
Right on, right on. And I know me and you talked before, and you talked about pretty much downsizing with a lot of unnecessary materials and services you have that are not necessary for you to live and survive. And I know you were informing me that in order to get to do what you do now, which is, be self-employed, pretty much had to, after the 9-to-5, had to come and pretty much do 3-4 hours a day, just really teaching yourself, learning and studying, and then, trying to get that experience. So
absolutely.
That you could be ready to transition over, correct?
Absolutely. You had to, when I was working in the corporate world from 2000 to 2011, I would go and do my 8 hours, come home, and I was gardening at night until it got dark. As soon as I got home, from 4 or 5 o'clock until it got dark, and I'd get up 2 or 3 hours in the morning just so that I could be able to do my gardening and what have you, because at the same time, not only am I gardening, but I'm learning. So it really comes down to, really, if you're trying to make that transition, you're going to have 2 jobs. You're going to be working those 8 hours to get your stuff together, and then you'll be doing another 4 to 8 hours trying to self-develop so that you can become, you can master some other type of skill to where somebody's going to pay you for it. So it's just a different mindset altogether.
Right. That's one of the meanings I like to call sacrifice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You sacrifice spending that time with your family, you sacrificing, being able to do some sort of extracurricular activity after the 9-to-5 and things of that nature. So thank you for that, Amos. Once again, you're listening to Debate Talk Views, segment called The Second Quarter. If you want to call in and talk with our guests, the number is 319-527-6239. Once again, the number is 319-527-6239, and press the 1 to talk. I know you haven't heard from my brother B.A. in a while, but he said he was just going to sit back and listen to the elders and get that wisdom generated and soaking it in like a sponge, and that's pretty much called learning in silence. You know what I mean? Learning in silence. So we're going to give B.A. an opportunity to ask any questions or comment on anything he would like to so far. Brother B.A., go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Most definitely praise the Most High for the words of wisdom. I liked how you brought up the word cult. And, living in this society, that's a spooky word. People get scared as soon as it pops up. First thing they think of is the Illuminati, the fictitious Satan worship / yada yada, the Jim Joneses and the negative propaganda that comes with it. And what a lot of people fail to realize is that the first so-called Christians, historically, they were a cult before Christianity was adopted by the Romans and turned into what it is today, or what it has manifested into today. So the first Christians were considered a cult based on the definition from the dictionary that you brought out. A lot of people don't even realize that. And that's from a historical perspective. The first Christians, prior to that, the Nazarenes and so forth. But yeah, you brought out some key information that a lot of people may not be accustomed to hearing. And me, myself, I've heard your story, and we've gotten a chance to know each other. And just to hear you break down some things about culture and the way we eat and the way we live, culture is all about lifestyle as well. So,
yes, sir.
I don't really have much to say. I see you doing the work of the kingdom, and like I said, I'm just here listening and soaking it up as a sponge. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you, B.A. I appreciate that. I appreciate your that approval comes and feels good coming from you.
Most definitely, my brother. But yeah, sis, we got any more callers or Sal?
Yeah, we got people listening in to the show, but nobody pressed number 1 yet at this time. Again, family, for free, the first number 1 getting tongue-tied. The number is 319-527-6239. I checked the emails as well. I'm seeing the email questions at this time. Again, that number is 319-527-6239. Wonder what in. Nobody pressing at this time.
Okay. If you So I would like to ask you, what are you doing for the youth? If you are active, I mean, I know you are active in Sacramento. I know what you're doing. But for those who are not aware of what you're doing for the youth or for young children, what are the programs that you're doing with them? If you are, or if you have something out there.
So we have a program. Yes, sir. Thank you for asking that question. So we have a program called Project Good. Project Good, the acronym is GOOD is an acronym for Growing Our Own Destiny. And so what we do is we grab young people out of our neighborhood and we go ahead and spend about 100 hours over the summertime with them. And during that time, they learn everything from how to plant seeds, of course, how to transplant those seeds once they germinate into the ground. Of course, once they grow up, they've got to be harvested. Once they get harvested, then they have to be washed and processed, which they learn how to do too. And then at some point, those crops that are harvested and processed need to be cooked, which they go through learning how to cook too. And then, of course, after you finished harvesting and cooking, then you have your kitchen scraps that are left over, which then end up getting composted and then go back into the soil again. And so they learn how to do that too. And then at the end of the 100 hours, they get a $300 stipend throughout the summertime, so they get a little bit of change to put in their pockets. And so we've had, we've probably been doing this for probably about 3 years now. Probably 4 years. The first year was kind of intro year. So we do this every year. And the idea is, one, to give them experience in agriculture, cooking, all those different types of things. We call that growing food, growing themselves, and then growing community. And we use agriculture as a way to kind of explain it all. So we introduce a lot of things into that particular environment that has to do with not just looking at the land as something to be used and exploited to make money, but also looking at the land as something sacred. Because, of course, if you don't have any value to what you're doing, then, of course, you're not going to be a good steward, which is what we were put here to be. So they get to learn that, all about those different types of things. And then what happened is one of our returning people from Project Good is now one of our part-time employees. So we actually hired somebody, and she now is one of the main apprentices for soap making. So she helps make the soap, helps wrap it up and those types of things as well. So it's a way of, one, giving that information to the youth, and then identifying those young people who want to take their skills further, giving them an opportunity to choose a place where they may want to work, and then if possible, being able to hire them if at all possible and necessary.
That's what's up. You know what I'm saying? Not many of our people who come into this faith or in this walk have much for the youth. We hear a lot about how we got to reach our youth and we got to make ways to make things what would I say? I know a lot of people that have a hard time with trying to bring our youth into this way, because a lot of people they have a hard time bringing in our kids into this lifestyle, because society has so much that distracts us and that makes it convenient for us to keep our kids inside the way of the world, like, the holidays and the traditions of going to school and things of that nature. Some people, I know such myself, I can most definitely admit that there were times to where I was challenged, to where I'm living this lifestyle and I'm still allowing my child or my children to do certain things in the school system and being vexed by that and being challenged. And it's very important as believers that when we break away from society or we break away from the way of the world, it's very important that we have various brothers and sisters around us, because when you have various brothers and sisters who are around you on a daily, it makes it easier. It's comfortable, so you're not feeling vexed, because now all of a sudden you have brothers and sisters around you daily who are going through the same thing with you, and then you can fellowship with them on the daily, and you can bring your kids around their kids. So for those who are struggling, stay in prayer, and pray that the Most High continues to raise up men like Chanowk and his family in your area, that you're able to break away from society if Most High willing, or at least start a community of your own, and pray the Most High gives you the tools and all the qualifications to do what you need to do. Like Christ said, pray that the Most High will help you as He sends you out into the world full of wolves. We're going to be tried when it's not going to be easy. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start cultivating. I'm going to start living different. No, it's deeper. It sounds good, but it actually takes time. It takes work. You have to endure. You have to be patient, because everything's not going to happen overnight. It's a process. And I just want to say that. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate the conversation, and most definitely praise the Most High.
Thank you, B.A. I appreciate that. That's very, very important to understand. What we have to start thinking about is we just need to just reread the Bible as a book about agriculture. And that's something that's very, very important to understand, is that when you start, every 2 to 3 chapters of the scriptures has some reference to Zion or the land. Every 2 to 3 chapters that you read is going to be mentioning the land. And so, in fact, the covenant for the Most High is usually measured by the health of the land. So I'm just going to give a couple of scriptural references, and then hopefully we'll be able to kind of maybe start concluding, or if there's people that want to come on and maybe want to call in or something. But let's start with Genesis chapter 3, and I'll read it. Genesis chapter 3, verses 17 through 19. Genesis chapter 3, verses 17 through 19. And it reads, "And unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. And thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." So when you start to look at, whenever something is done that doesn't make the Most High happy, then you're looking at some kind of curse as it relates to the ability to be able to be a steward of the land. We can also go to Deuteronomy chapter 11. Deuteronomy chapter 11, starting with verse 11. Let's see here. Starting with verse 11. Going to 17, but I don't think we'll go that far. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 11 reads, "But the land whither ye go to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven, a land in which the Lord Yahweh thy God careth for, and the eyes of the Lord Yahweh thy God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year even unto the end of the year. And it shall come to pass, if ye shall hearken diligently unto my commandments, which I command you this day, to serve the Lord Yahweh thy God, or your God, and serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, that I will give you rain in your land in his due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that thou mayest gather in thy corn and thy wine and thy oil. And I will send grass in thy fields for thy cattle, that thou mayest eat and be full. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. And then the Lord Yahweh's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up the heaven, that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, and lest ye perish quickly from off of the good land which the Lord Yahweh giveth you. So that kind of encapsulates that you see that agricultural production and harvest is based on our obedience. I'll read one more, maybe two more, but one more. I'll go to Isaiah chapter 16, verse 8. Isaiah chapter 16, verse 8, and it reads, For the fields of Heshbon languish, and the vine of Sibmah, the lords of the heathen have broken down the principal plants. They are come even unto Zazer, and wander through the wilderness. Her branches are stretched out, and they are gone over the sea. Therefore will I bewail the weeping of Jazer and vine of Sibmah. I will water thee with my tears, O Heshbon and Eliale, for the shouting for thy summer fruits, and for thy harvest is fallen. And the gladness is taken away, and the joy out of thy plentiful field. And in the vineyards there shall be no singing, neither shall there be shouting. And the treader shall tread out no wine in their presses, and I have made their vintage shouting to cease. But that's also contrasted to when you start to talk about Israel actually behaving. So then if we go to Psalms chapter 85:12, Psalms chapter 85:12, and it reads, Yeah, the Lord Yahweh shall give that which is good. Our land shall yield her increase. In verse 13, righteousness shall go before him and shall set us in the way of his steps. So you see here when we're disobedient, then we have problems with land. We have problems being on land. We have problems possessing land, and we have problems producing things on the land. And even if we do even get that far when we're disobedient, then many times that production is going to somebody else. Whereas when we are obedient, then the land produces for us. In fact, we are producing on the land. Because when we start to think about the difference between obedience and disobedience, and I'm encapsulating that, is to say that when we're obedient, then we're, one, practicing the lifestyle and culture which the Most High has given us, which includes the law, statutes, judgments, and commandments, but it also includes some of the trades that I talked about before. It also includes some of the cultural things and the lifestyle things that give us the things that we're supposed to do in order to keep ourselves separate. Because in the society that we live in today, if you don't have resources that you're either producing and then selling to other people, if you don't have those things, then you're probably going to have to go to work for somebody. In fact, it's one of the laws in our culture that if you don't have the ability to produce things for yourself, then you have to go and sell yourself away to your enemy in slavery, right? So that you're able to survive. So, it's just one of those things that when we're obedient, then we're thinking about those things and we're producing those things whereby which not only can we become self-sufficient, but then we can use those things, the surplus of those things, to be able to trade, and we can keep ourselves out of the hands of our enemies because, of course, when you start producing your own, then what happens is then you can make the decisions to pull your children out of school because you don't have to be worried about the 9-to-5 job. You can make decisions to live certain types of lifestyles. For example, you can keep the holy days and you don't have to worry about somebody telling you, oh, well, you can't get the day off or we need you here, that type of thing. And so what it does is it gives you a greater amount of freedom or a greater amount of power over your life. And that's what we have to have in order for us to start living the lifestyle that the Most High wants us to live. So, I just wanted to just bring that out for a quick moment.
Thank you, especially about the rain coming so we can have the land yield product for us, righteous product, and that depends on our obedience, our willingness to surrender to the Most High will. I'm really appreciating this conversation. I you know, a lot of people are soaking in it. I am, you know, of course, as always. So we do have some more callers on the line. I know if you're okay with that. We got a few people who pressed the one, so they got some questions for you or some comments. So go ahead, Sam. Bring in your callers.
All right. Once again, we're going to the phone lines. This is the second quarter. Make sure you call in 319-527-6239. Let's go to 951-210. You're live.
Shalom, shalom. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Shalom, shalom. This is Marie Miller calling in. I'm really, really enjoying this conversation. It opens up a whole nother side of, you know, looking at Scripture and how we function as a culture over just, like you said in the beginning, just meeting up religiously. You know.
Absolutely.
And you have a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot of great sites where Hebrews meet or, you know, find Hebrews or find congregations. But what I don't see is places where you could find what you're doing, you know, agriculturally in different cities where people could meet up. Because like the brother said earlier, I think it was Brother Mercy, is not everybody has the space or the ability to be able to do these things or learn these things. You know, and when it comes to the youth, like the program that you had, being able to have your own children experience that thing, because the accomplishment of the children now is consumerism. What you got, what you wear, that's what makes you set apart or how they feel successful is what you're wearing. And not creating or not learning how to produce or create or feel like they've accomplished something. You know, and if you're just throwing scriptures at children and you got to live this and you got to do that, then they're going to go into that, like you said, slave mentality back into Egypt. But look what they're learning, but look what they're doing, and look how much more. All I have is this right here. You know, I don't get to have these things, to do these things. And giving them a sense of a purpose and accomplishment and teach them how to survive and take care of themselves without having to consume these things would be a great thing. Excuse me. It would be nice if we could find, you know, places where Israel or people that have agricultural places where people can come work in around places. That's one thing I don't see. Like I said, this is a whole nother thought process right here. That's why I'm enjoying it so much, because it's something that's making you think on a whole different level, you know, and to be able to find what you have in Sacramento and a network of places, you know, around the country would be great for people to be able to locate in their area if they don't have the room to do it themselves.
Absolutely. Well, the thing about that, just if I might add, is that if you live in a city in the United States and that city is located somewhere close by Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in your city, then you'll find that most of the time that you already are dealing with a place that's got a bunch of empty lots anyways. I've been to several places across the country, and I just have seen that to be true, because they have empty lots that, you know, not anybody, but anybody with the right motivation could start to grow their own food on. So it's not something that has to be you know, for example, you may not go from, you know, just learning how to grow food to having your own land right away, but you can always practice. And if I can go to Scripture, I want to go to Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1, and it says, "The Spirit of the Lord Yahweh, Lord God Yahweh is upon me, because the Lord Yahweh hath anointed me to preach good tidings to the meek, and he has sent me up to bind the brokenhearted, and to proclaim the liberty to the captives, and open of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord Yahweh, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, oil for joy, oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, and planting of the Lord Yahweh, that he might be glorified. And then after all that takes place, then verse 4 says, and they shall build the old wastes. They shall raise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many generations. And so for me, as I see that, the old wastes are nothing but the ghettos in our city where our people live. And granted, I know that, the question of what we should be doing here, since it is the place of our captivity, is always a question, because some people feel like, oh, well, we shouldn't be doing anything until we go back to Israel. And to that, I say that I believe that that's incorrect. And I say that to say that not that we should be preparing to live here for the rest of our lives, but at the same time, Israel has always been a group of people. I've not known of any time where Israel was called a place until maybe in the 40s or whenever they decided that they were going to go over there and make it a place that was called Israel. So that being said, we take the knowledge of Israel with us wherever we go. And since we were, farmers and carpenters and people that made pottery and metallurgists and all those different things in the past, those things should always be a part of the knowledge that we have as a people, and they should go with us wherever we go, so that wherever we find ourselves, whether it's here in the United States or whether it's in South America, or whether we find ourselves in Zambia or even Mozambique somewhere, that as soon as we touch down, we have the knowledge of agriculture, we have the knowledge of how to make our own pottery, we have the knowledge of carpentry so that we're able to build our own houses. And so if you look at other groups around the planet, for example, Sacramento is not too far from San Francisco. San Francisco is about 2 hours west for us. But San Francisco has this anomaly called Chinatown. And that is the largest group of Chinese people outside of China in the world. And it was established in 1879. And so the people that came here, and of course they went through their period of being treated a certain way by the white people that were here. But they were like, when I leave my home country, my whole purpose is to set up a replica of my own country on another place on this planet. And so that's what they did. They came, they settled there in 1879, and they just kept building. And they were building Chinese. And even to this day, you go so far down into Chinatown, and there's places where nobody speaks English. Even the police officers have to speak Mandarin because nobody knows how to speak English. And so that should tell you that we should always be looking to take our culture with us as we start to develop that culture. And that culture should be more, like I said, it should be more than us meeting and talking about scriptures. It should be meeting and talking about scriptures, i.e. spirituality. It should be meeting and talking about how we as a people are going to protect ourselves, i.e. politics. It should be how we're going to educate ourselves, including our children, i.e. education. It should be how we're going to gather our resources and pool our resources together on how in order to be able to get land, in order to be able to make sure that our children can go to the schools to learn these certain types of skills, trade skills. But then at the same time, once they learn these skills, they can be able to teach them to the young people so that when they get old enough, they don't have to go around with their resumes in their hand or resumes, if you got the right apostrophe in the right place, so they don't have to go around begging for jobs with their resumes. Now, granted, there may be some young people or some people that have to get specialized types of jobs that require specialized types of information, and they may have to go and work a job for a period of time. But that shouldn't stop us. We can still do that, but that should be the exception to the rule and not the rule itself. So what I see here in the scripture from Isaiah chapter 61:4 is that our communities that we live in are in waste, and it's our job to restore them. And all of what we're talking about on this call is the way to do that. I'd also like to just say that the most important part of Israelite society is the family and the family culture. because that's ultimately what's going to survive the elders and the patriarchs, matriarchs of the family. And so that is something that must be intact. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves in the place that we are right now.
Right on, right on. That was Sister Marie. Sister Marie, thank you for calling in with your comment. And I know if I could say this, Sister Marie, you can start off by if you have a backyard. I pretty much started with a little garden in my backyard. Or I know he's very educated in raised beds. If people live in apartments, how to start with gardening in pottery. I think you can also put yourself out there as a person who's willing and wanted to meet up with some people, a group of farmers around your area, networking, or people who want to start being innovative when it comes to that, and finding people who share those ideas. So you can also reach out to your local community, to the Phoenix Saver or the newspaper, or Craigslist for that matter, and see if there's some gardening classes, some classes such as that, and then you can go and get that information, and then maybe you can find a person or two of your people, who you'd like to build a network with, who you'd like to establish a group to fellowship and congregate with further, and learn how to build and grow from there, and get together and go ahead and implement that. But that's just an idea. All right, Sal, we got any more callers on the line?
Yes, we do. Once again, that number is 319-527-629. We'd like to hear from the people out there, so we appreciate the people pressing number 1, and, of course, the listeners out there that's tuning in, taking down their notes. You can also send me an email, debatetalkforyou@gmail.com, for those that don't want to necessarily call in but still have a question or a comment. Let's go to the next caller. Let's go to 561-421. You're live.
Shalom, family. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I finally got through. Sister Shan-T, I got through. Sister Maya, I just want to say a wonderful show. I got here late. Unfortunately, I was hung up on another meeting, but nevertheless, just hearing about farming, that just does something to my spirit, because we know these are the end days that we're living in, and we know the Spirit is calling us back to the land, because that's what we're going to need to survive. And a lot of us out here as children of Israel know that they are doing abominable things to the food. They're doing abominable things to the meat. We got the chemtrails. We got everything coming at us, and we want to get back to the land. But a lot of times when we look around, we don't know where to start, and we really would like to tap into family most of all, someone that's going to teach us how to do things, do things by the rules of Torah. And I'm just thankful that the Father is calling up the farmers that's in the land here to teach us how to get back to the roots. I'm just so honored to be on here with the Israel family. Our ministry have been making contact with a lot of farming families out there. We, matter of fact, we just made contact with a Geechee farmer. We share your posts. We deal with the Urban Sister. We got Parker.
I know the Geechee
with
farmers.
us. Yeah, Moray Shalim is coming to hang out and talk with us Sunday, and I didn't even know you guys were going to be here tonight, but I just know I want to be on here to support my daughter, my bot, Shan-T Dot. I love that girl. Right. I love the big talk for you too. I love you, Sarah, Brother Josh, and everybody at ABT. But nevertheless, I just want to say, we appreciate all that you all do. We are thankful that the Father have called you up as a ministry to help us get back to the roots, to teach us that we can do it and we can do it the proper way. And there's people out there that's willing to open up the door and make a way so that we can learn how to get back to farming. I just wanted to put that out there and say, wonderful show. I got here a little late, but what I did hear, I know it was the best what my ears want to hear, because we are on the same wavelength. So my one question was, before I go, was, do you all deal in any aquaponics? Because we know there's a sister called the Urban Sister. I don't know if you know her. The Urban Sister. She's kind of in the arena too. Okay, she's not like woke Hebrew, but nevertheless, she does farming and she does aquaponics. Sure. And I've been looking for somebody that's in our community. I know Brother Yerushalayim was doing it, but like somebody like within the Geechee Farmer, then you guys, is anybody doing aquaponics, or is that feasible to be done with us? You know.
So yes, so aquaponics, for those people that are listening, just to talk a little bit about aquaponics. Aquaponics is a compound word made of two words. One is aquaculture, and then the other word is hydroponics. Aquaculture has to do with any type of plants that grow in water, and then hydroponics is the ability to grow plants without having them in soil. So what aquaponics is using like ponds or running water so you basically have fish, you have water, and then you have plants. The plants are in a solution to where they don't have soil, and so what happens is as the fish, they go to the bathroom, their waste material is sucked up by the plants from inside of the water in order to get the nutrients. And then what the plants do is the plants actually clean the water so that it can recirculate back into the tank where the fish are. So it gives you the ability to grow food and raise fish in a place that may not have soil soil could be contaminated or all those types of things. So to answer that question, just so I can make sure I can give the background, we don't do aquaponics on our farm, and reason being is because we're in California, we're in a Mediterranean climate. For those people that know, Sacramento Valley, Central Valley area, at some point in time, we used to feed 75% of the United States out of just the Central Valley in the areas and where we live because we have that type of climate. So we have very good soil here. However, for those people that are in a place to, one, you don't have land, two, you have soil, but the soil is contaminated in some sort, then aquaponics represents a great way to be able to get fish and to be able to get food. But like I said, we don't have it here on our farm at this time. We prefer to get our hands in the soil and prefer to do it that way because we can. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it did. I think, once again, on behalf of the children of Israel, we thank you all for doing what you do. Keep doing what you do, and the call is out, and we are coming. One last other thing I just want to add to the great talk to you. I think I was talking to Brother Sal one time, and, people with Metro phones, it's hard for us to get through, and then they say go by Google Voice. But when we do Google Voice, we can hear the whole, conversation. But when we press 1, you can't get through. But, I found out today, my daughter was telling me you can download Talkatone, and that's how I was able to get through. So for all you out there, if you're just suffering like I was suffering with Google app, you can get through. Download Talkatone, and you can get through the debate talk with you. Other than that, I love your family. Great show. Shalom.
I appreciate that. Talkatone. I got to get on that. There we go. Talkatone. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That was Mother Mayan. Thank you, Mother Mayan, for calling in and supporting Sal, supporting this brand, supporting the children of Israel. And I appreciate you as like an adopted daughter. I appreciate you so much for calling in and your support and your love. Sal, any more calling?
I appreciate.
All right. Once again, number 319. Yeah, she got cut. Yeah, she down. I don't know what happened. Let's go to the next caller though. Let's see. Skype caller, you're live.
Peace, shalom, family. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Shalom, sis. B.A., Brother Chanowk. Good to finally hear you. I've heard a lot about you from the sister Shan-T. This is the brother Anonymous Hebrew. How you doing tonight,
Wonderful, Aki. How you doing this evening or wherever you're calling from?
Yeah, I'm in Georgia, so cold. I'm all good.
Oh, okay.
I'm all good, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, I love the dialect. I love the dialogue. I mean, I thought that you brought some excellent points to the table, especially as it pertains to getting back to the culture. My biggest thing that I want to talk to you about is the agriculture part, and specifically first. So, like for me, pretty soon I will be purchasing, probably a good size amount of land. And one of the concerns I was trying
to get an understanding of is the ratio that you look at, like for land to people in terms of production-wise to be fully self-sustained. You know what I'm saying? Like, are we needing 2 acres to feed 100 people? Like, what's that ratio look like?
Well, so there's 2 ways to look at this. First of all, and it's not really a ratio. It's really about operation and what you're going to do. Because when you start to look at the way that the Bible is written and the way that they did agriculture in the Bible, like the way that we think of agriculture now, and this is most of it because we live in a capitalistic society, is, okay, I got some land, I'm going to grow some food on some land, and then I'm going to take the food that I grow on the land, and then I'm going to go sell it to somebody, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that's only the economic piece of it. What really needs to be looked at it as far as what we're doing with agriculture is creating farming communities. And so let me just give you an idea of what that means is that in addition to having people on the land growing food, then you also have to have housing, because one of the biggest things for our people is housing, right? So, and then you're talking about being able to provide food and then shelter. So then what happens is then you have people that can be on the land, that can work there, and they can live there, which then, of course, it's going to make it easier for you to be self-sufficient if you have land in which you can live there and you can grow food there. So it's really about thinking about, because when you're talking about growing all of your own food, it's not the same as most farmers do, because most farmers, they specialize on a few different things, and then they grow a bunch of things. Or they grow a few different things exclusively, and then that's what they take to the market. Whereas when you're trying to grow food to become self-sufficient for your own eating, then you're having to grow everything that you need to eat. So you may be growing greens and those types of things, different types of greens. You may be growing beets. You may be growing turnips, radishes, parsnips, all of those root crops. But then you have to think about where's your protein coming from. And if it's not coming from meat, then you're going to be growing beans. And you might, even if it is coming from meat, you're talking about growing beans. You're talking about sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are my favorite. They're packed with so many different types of vitamins, and they taste so good. You can throw a couple of sweet potatoes in the oven and bake them, and you straight just like that.
Right.
But so when you're thinking about growing for self-sufficiency, then that's a little bit different, because then you're talking about producing enough calories so that everybody that's there can be able to eat. Whereas if you're talking about farming for a living, then you're talking about growing enough food to where then you're able to take that food to market to get money, and then you may take that money to buy other foodstuffs that you don't necessarily produce.
Right. So then from that perspective, then is it smart to have, like, if you say you got a dedicated 20 acres just for a community, right? And you have a certain section that's sectioned off for living, then you section off another portion for farming. Is it then feasible or smarter to set up those that have individual housing with their own personal gardens as well, and then have one major farm that you can use?
If you ask me on how, if I had 20 or 30 acres and I was putting together like a farming community, what I would have is I would have like maybe a certain acreage that would be for cash crops, right? And of course, that's going to be determined. That's going to be determined on whatever your market is. I mean, if you're in California, it could be cannabis. If you're in somewhere else, Atlanta, it could be CBD, which is now legal to grow, because of the farm bill that just came out. Or it could be carrots, or it could be turnips, or it could be something that you're going to create a whole bunch of, so that those are the things that you take to market and sell. However, and then of course you may take, maybe you got an acre or so to where you are focusing that on something like sweet potatoes, or even rather regular potatoes, or something like that, so that you have those calories that you need. And then within that area where you have the community where people are living, I mean, you can grow, people can have front yard gardens, backyard gardens. They could be in pots. They could do a whole bunch of different things. And then what you would have, and even if you take a look at it, you could probably look at the kibbutz system that they practiced in Israel way back when.
Right.
A whole bunch of
That's
books
what I was
about
going to
that.
ask you about. Right.
that system, and I have extensive library on those types of books too, to where what happens is that when you get up in the morning, you've got certain people that have certain tasks, and then you have certain people that have certain tasks as it relates to, getting up in the morning and making sure that there's food for the people, and laundry has to be done, and all those different types of things. So you're really talking about dividing labor up based on who has the skills to do those things. But what I would say is you probably take 10 acres or so, or even 5, depending on what you're trying to produce, and you would say, okay, these are going to be where we're growing our cash crops, which means we're growing a whole bunch of stuff, and we're taking that stuff to a market somewhere in which to sell. And then you're having another part of it that's going to be your community. And, of course, those people are going to have their own crops, too, as well, that they're going to, and they may still get stuff off of the places where you have your cash crops. But for the most part, they should be able to grow the stuff that they need right there inside of that little community.
Right.
Yeah, they're needing on their own. And everybody, and some families may say, okay, we're going to grow squash. Some families may say, okay, we're going to grow the greens and what have you.
Then you barter.
You barter for each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's my opinion. It's my opinion that the things that we produce as for Israel, within farming communities, should somehow be able to be made available to each other without cost, and the costs should be passed on to those people that are outside the community, i.e. the same way that I was talking about the Chinese restaurant, to where they set up a restaurant. It's part of their culture. They put that in a place outside their community so that you can go to it, and then they take that money and bring that money back into the community because somebody in that community is producing the soy sauce. Somebody's producing the rice. Somebody is importing in the chopsticks. Somebody's importing in the different types of herbs and spices. Somebody may be growing the vegetables and things that they have. So that particular restaurant there becomes a business which is made up of other tiny businesses that people within the community are responsible for, so that when you bring your money there, you're then supporting their community and all the businesses in it.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I think the idea that you have about it, or the way that you see how it should look, is definitely the smartest way if you are going to set up a farming community, which I think all of us should really be looking towards anyway. Just with what we see happening on the horizon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's coming down the road, And I understand. I know there's somebody made a comment about us being nomadic, and like that before, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is this: if I got 4 brothers and you're nomadic with yourself, and yourself and maybe your wife and your children, then we got you. It's just that simple.
As you come through, then maybe you come from his camp to that camp, right? I feel you.
Right. So it's going to require more than just families. You're going to have families are going to have to get together with other families, and you're going to have to come up with some kind of 10 commandments for your community or whatever the situation is, so that people that have differences can still stand together in solidarity. Because when it's time to go down, you're going to need all the people that you're going to get, because people can't get access to things they need. People going to revert to animalistic real quick, and it's not going to be about, oh, yeah, I'm with the Most High. It's going to be, okay, how many people do you have that are with the Most High? Because if somebody come in, they come in and take what they want, and you got to be ready for that.
And just to back up that point, I tell people to start looking at some of the things that you see happening, like in Venezuela.
Yes, sir.
I was seeing certain footage of like people that were living rurally and people just rushing their farm, like just and they didn't have anybody there to stop them. 20 or 30 dudes rushing their farm just to get a cow, just to take down a cow. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. So it's definitely. I think you're correct. The strength is going to be in our ability to create a community with each other. So, hey man, I think this was an excellent conversation. I appreciate you for coming on and doing your thing. Obviously, I'm going to reach out and get in touch with you through Shan-T because there are some other things that I'm doing out here that I want to pick your brain about. And keep doing what you're doing, brother. We need it. You know what I'm saying? Shalom, Aki.
Thank you.
Shalom, Sid.
Shalom, shalom.
Brother B.A., you know what, Sal?
Shalom.
I love you too.
Shalom, Anonymous.
What up, though, family? Peace.
What up, though?
Right.
Yeah. See, this how we talk amongst one another. When you start, going behind the switchboard, and you get off the phone and you get off the internet, and then you start dialing each other up, and then you start meeting up, start building that relationship, and then once you get comfortable with people, you can talk to people like we're real family, like real brother and sister, right? So this is how
absolutely
right. So that's me from no talk like that every week. But I know we're gonna wrap it up in a bit. On the way out, I do have a question. So we can pretty much elaborate on the conversation that you just had, or a little chat with Anonymous, and he was asking what to do for making sure that everybody has their essentials when they're needed to eat. Plus, you informed him of what you're supposed to have as far as cash crop to pretty much invest in and to make a product off of or make a return on investment, right? So and that's pretty much your social, political, and your economics, what you're saying. So
yes.
If there's a way you could talk about going to your lawmakers, things of that nature, and how to be able to establish yourself to be able to market your product, and can you also talk about how you work with the city of Sacramento so that people who are growing food in their backyard, front yard, can actually make a profit off of that, like in front of their home? Talk about that.
Okay. So first of all, I know that within Yisrael in general, because if you go on YouTube or whatever, there's all different types of thoughts, and so what ends up happening is that we take this idea, of course, that we're supposed to be separate, which is true. We're supposed to be separate from our enemies and what have you. But also, you have to also understand that that's not always the case in which we find ourselves. And I'll say that in the case of Joseph, who got sold away, and of course ended up in Pharaoh's court. And being in Pharaoh's court with his coat of many colors, he was able to make great strides within that society, even though the rest of his brethren were in captivity. And him being put in that place ultimately led to the saving of the children of Israel from having to be killed or whatever the situation in Egypt. You also see that in the case of Nehemiah, where he went to the governor and he got authorization in order to be able to go rebuild the gates of Jerusalem. So I'm just giving you that as a little context to what I'm going to say, because when we first started growing our food here, we're in the middle of the city. We're in the middle of what's called Oak Park or South Oak Park, which is called the Hood. And so when we got ready, once we got the idea and got the hang of growing food, we're like, okay, we want to go sell some food. And so, of course, in trying to make sure that, we don't end up with any fines or anything, I went and tried to figure out, what's it going to get for me to be able to sell food at my farm or on my property. And I found out that it was illegal. There was no rules. Basically, it was you can't do it. So I got together with a couple of other people, non-Israelites, of course, but they were skilled in law, and we put together a coalition. And with that coalition, we went to the city council and the county supervisors. Those are the seats of power for the city and county here in Sacramento. And we advanced some legislation that would make it legal to grow your food and then being able to sell it at a farm stand on your property. And so after, lobbying and going through the process of dealing with governmental agencies and what have you, we were able to get the law passed. So now in Sacramento, I can have a farm stand right on my property, even though my property itself is not zoned agricultural. And so what that means is that if you live in the city, wherever you live, then what you need to know is that what you can do on your land is controlled by zoning. So some particular parcels of land are zoned agricultural. That means you can grow food on them and what have you. Some are zoned residential, which means that you can only build residential properties on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's on and on. But we were able to get those laws changed in Sacramento City and Sacramento County. So what I'm saying to you is that if you live in the city, you should know where all the seats of power in your city are anyways. That should just be like second nature because you're going to have to live there. And you should be somebody within a congregation or a community or in a family should be up on what's happening at your planning committees and what kind of uses that they're allowing people to do with the types of land that you may have in the city that you live. These things are very important. For example, we see Abraham when he was about to die, or it was time for him to start thinking about getting some burial land, he found whoever the seat of power was in the place where he was living, and what did he do? He went to him and said, hey, I need to find me some burial land for my family. And so he found those people, he pulled out some money, bought some land, and that was the place where people got buried. So it is pretty obvious that, we do need to know these things in our cities. We need to know where the seat of power is. We need to know what kind of acceptable uses are made for land. And if possible, you should get to know, your city council people and people in city hall. Not that you should be getting to know them because you're going to worship them and what have you, but you should get to know them because a lot of times we don't realize is that people know who we are. And in interfacing with governmental agencies, especially me, especially with my name being changed, there's many times where I've had people to tell me just straight up, oh, you're Israel, and you're coming back to start doing farming again? Oh, that's a symbol. And they tell me they know that once we start practicing agriculture and doing those things, that they know that that's when the ensign is going to be set up, and people are going to know that it's our time to come back into where we were before. So, there are people waiting in your city right now, is what I'm saying. There's people waiting in your city right now to talk to you so that they can figure out how they can be blessed during the times in which Israel starts to reconstruct itself.
Right on. And that sounds like starting to really live Deuteronomy 28, verses 1 through 14. I want to be identified by the blessings, you know what I mean? And I pretty Right. And what you're pretty much saying is where there's a will, there's a way. And if our people are willing and diligent and want to really be obedient to the Most High Yahweh, the Father, and have these things be implemented so we're the head and not the tail, we're going to have to sacrifice and redirect our thinking and redirect our resources, our money, and redirect our understanding of how to go about dealing with certain people in politics, because we are in the land of our captivity. We do have to follow the laws of the land. So what more, can we do except have the laws of the land work for us? And you're a living example. You've experienced that. You can get it done. And we can get it done, Israel. We could definitely get it done. And I really appreciate Chanowk coming on this platform to pretty much put that information out there, put that motivation out there, get that enthusiasm up. We're talking about uplifting and encouraging, but we also have a brother who's willing to give this information, tell us how, show us how. You know what I mean? And this is rare, and hopefully more people are encouraged. More people have the tenacity and the drive to say, hey, I want to get into a little bit of this, even myself. I'm in the corporate world. I'm implementing as much as I can about my people's original culture, as much as possible, and pretty much get myself out of the rat race into as much as this culture that I can get back into, Yahweh willing. And I know it's a process, and while I'm being patient and waiting, I'm also being active in my waiting, because that's what it is. Doing action work, not just sitting around fiddling my thumbs and my fingers, you know. So I appreciate that. I know we're going to get some last words from Brother B.A. and then yourself, I know, pretty much. Thank you so very much for coming on, and I appreciate you and Sister Judith and the Israel Family Forum for all that you do and all that you continue to do. May the Most High bless you and keep you. Go ahead, Brother B.A.
You know what? I most definitely would like to let the elder get a chance to close out, and then I'll say my words after Hadot. You go ahead, elder.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Once again, like I said, you know, this is the Most High ordering steps here. I never, at any time, it's so funny that I think about it, because my great grandfather, who had to grow up in post Reconstruction and post Jim Crow time, he was a farmer, which I just found out not too long ago. I didn't know that until I had already been growing food before I found out that. Also, my dad, he used to grow food in the backyard, and I found a picture of him with a big tomato in his hand not too long ago. And it was funny because during those times, I didn't even remember that he was doing that, and it just jogged my memory when I saw that. So never discount what exposure does. Those seeds were planted in my mind, and obviously those seeds got the right environment, and they germinated, and here I am today. One thing I do want to just say, also in closing and conclusion, with Shan-T, is that everybody doesn't necessarily need to be a farmer, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands that everybody does not have to do that. It's something that's very, very important, but just like when we start thinking nation, we're going to have people doing everything. So there might be people that have to still continue to go inside the world and work a 9-to-5 job. And it may be just because we need you to go and get certain information that you can bring back into the nation or into the community or into the village or into the clan or family, and that information can be used to carve out a place for us and our children. And so when you look at nature, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about ants, which, of course, Proverbs 6:6 tells you need to go and study the ants, but whether it's ants all the way up to lions, the whole purpose of their existence is they have a culture. Every single animal has a culture. Lions have a certain way that their society is made up and the way that they operate. Ants have a certain society, the way that their communities are set up and the way they operate. The same for bees, same for termites, same for squirrels, same for cats, same for dogs. And their whole entire purpose on the planet is to, one, of course, reproduce themselves. But even even with that, the next thing is what? Finding a way to be able to carve out a piece of this planet for themselves and for their children. That's what they do. And so as we start to think about how to go about doing that, wherever we are, whether we're here in the United States, whether we're in South America, whether we're in Canada, whether we're in Australia, whether we're in Japan, whether we're in Israel, is that we need to start coming into the idea that our job is to descend on a piece of land, a piece of property, or somewhere on the planet, and then we have to start replicating strong family structures in order for us to be able to start gathering our resources and pooling our resources, pooling our power, and using that to protect ourselves and build this hedge around ourselves so that we can be protected. And that hedge is going to be made up of us growing our own food so that we don't have to worry about the food that's being poisoned and, that's being sprayed with pesticides. Producing our own meats so we don't have to worry about all the despicable things that they do to the meats. Learning how to, if we have 20 acres, maybe we need to put an acre of cotton in place. And don't be afraid of cotton because they've made us slave work in it, so that we can then start to think about how we can get that cotton and turn that cotton into some types of material that we can start making our own clothes. And then we have to think about approaching this from the idea of food, clothing, and shelter. Once we have those things under control, then believe me, life is going to look totally different for us. So, just looking at those things and not really taking it from a dogmatic perspective, but understand that we're no different than any other animals. We're no different than any other group of people or group of things on the planet. But we have to come together and we have to start building for ourselves. Otherwise, I want to leave out with Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, because wealth is not something that we should be afraid of. And let's see here. And it says, Deuteronomy chapter 8:18, but thou shalt remember the Lord Yahweh thy God, for it is he that giveth thee the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day. So what that means is that, and of course, do your research to study it and study the words, but it means is that in order for you to establish the covenant with the Most High, you're going to have wealth. And wealth is not money. Paper money is not wealth. That's just an evidence of debt for those people that are aware of that. But the actual wealth that you have is going to give you the power to establish a covenant. Why do I say that? Because if you have to keep the Sabbath, then, and the job that you have won't let you, then you have to have enough wealth to where you don't need that job. So then you can be able to keep the Sabbath whenever you have to keep it. Because, it's my opinion that the Sabbath is not necessarily going to be Friday or Saturday, Friday night to Saturday night every year. Just in the same way that even though your birthday may be on January 10th, is not on the same day, the same name day of the year. Or even if you are keeping a different type of calendar system, what if they say next year it's from, I don't know, Tuesday to Sunday, next Sunday, and you have to take that week off? If you don't have the wealth that comes from dwelling together in unity, then you don't have the power to be able to even say to your employer, well, I need to take this week off. You may not have the money to be able to do it. You may not have the wealth because they can easily say to you, well, you can't go. And if you do go, we'll fire you. And if you don't have the wealth, then you'll just have to just put up with that. So it's very important to understand that these things that we're talking about here, such as growing our own food, learning trades, all these things that I'm talking, these are the things that make up the wealth that is going to allow us to actually establish the covenant with the Most High, as well as our obedience to the law, statutes, judgments, and commandments. And believe me, once we can start to align those things, then we'll start to see life in a whole different spectrum. And our children will want to continue to keep doing this with us, because then we won't have to send them out into the world with their resumes while teaching them that we're God's chosen people. But then when they get old enough, we have to send them out and go get jobs. We should be providing the jobs for them. So thank you again, Shan-T. Thank you again, BA. And I just give all praise to the Most High for being able to be in a position to speak to you and the audience that are listening. That's all I have.
Hallelujah. Praise you.
Man, praise the Most High. In closing, I hope that everybody was able to receive the message and the words that Brother Chanowk was sharing this evening. We live in a society to where it's based on, I'll just say this, the leaders of our society, our politicians, and that things right now are starting to go, we're at the point of no return. And as Israel, we always claim to know. And if we are to know, then it's our job to do things like Chanowk, what he is doing, and to follow suit, and to lead by example, and to make aware to the nations or to the people that society or the powers that run society, they don't have anything that's going to I don't have anything that's going to give the people any type of light. It's only based on convenience, and that's capitalism for you. Capitalism is always bringing out something that's a convenience for the moment. So right now, the system is unjust. The system is at a point to where it always has to reform and reevaluate and bring in some type of new concept to where they can just take from the people more and more. As the light and as believers in the Most High, we are supposed to be presenting something new because His kingdom is growing. And I hope and I pray that we, as Israelites or as believers or as Christians or wherever we tend to go by or want to go by, that we keep that in mind and jump out of fairy tale dogma and actually look at this from a social, political perspective. Because when the Messiah was on earth, he was dealing with the social issues of the people. He was calling people to organize and to come together, and because he most definitely has solutions and some of the people received it, a lot of people rejected it, but he had something to bring to the table because he understood the kingdom and he understood his mission and his purpose. And with that being said, much love to all, and shalom.
Shalom.